Okay, so as a kid, anytime my mom would leave for work, she didn't want to wake us up to tell us bye. If we were already awake, she would tell us bye and everything. And my grandparents lived right across the yard from us. We shared a property with my grandparents on a farm, so my grandparents would, kind of keep an eye out for us and everything. Being farm kids, there wasn't much trouble we could get into and all this by ourselves. But when I would already be awake, laying in bed, waiting for my mom to come in, tell me bye, give me a hug and kiss, stuff like that. But then I would see her go out to her vehicle and leave, and I would just start bawling. I didn't understand the reason why at the time was because my dad left without saying goodbye. So I always had this in the back of my head. Anytime my mom would leave without saying goodbye, I always had this feeling that I wouldn't see her again either. And that was part of the trauma that led to my borderline personality disorder. The fear of abandonment. And that's what it was for my dad, was abandonment. And very toxic relationship too, because anytime he did anything for us, he would always hold it over our heads. And as a teenager, one of his favorite phrases, whenever we would go to see him, or the year that I lived with him when I was a senior in high school, and in my 20s, I stayed with him for a while. One of his favorite phrases to say to us, anytime we were joking around or whatever, was, and he would say this to all of his boys, was, "The best part of you ran down my leg." And it's hard to tell if he actually meant it kidding or not, given everything I experienced from him. He put it off as kidding, as joking around, but I always got the feeling that he actually thought that. And when I was a kid, I must have been like 10, 11 years old, somewhere around there, maybe 13. I had always called my parents mommy and daddy. I didn't feel comfortable calling them mom and dad. Even though I only saw my dad once or twice a year, if we were lucky, it was just a comfort thing for me. I always called them mommy and daddy. Well, one time we were visiting, and I had called my dad daddy, and my sister started teasing me about it. I think she's like 5, 6 years older than me, something like that. And my dad started kicking in too, saying, "You don't have to call me daddy, I'm dad," and all this. And my grandpa would get on me about that. And when he spoke, he kind of yelled, almost like he was always angry. He was the kind of guy that children should be seen and not heard. So it was like any kind of time I'd call him dad, my dad daddy, my grandpa would say, "That's your dad. You're too old to be calling him daddy." And my mom had always said that I could call her mommy as long as I wanted to. Well, at this visit, when this happened, my mom came to pick us up. My dad had a conversation with my mom in private. And essentially he just said that, I was too old to be calling him daddy and too old to be calling her mommy and stuff. So on the way home, she had a talk with me saying that, maybe I should just stop saying mommy and daddy. Start calling them mom and dad. And that always stuck with me. And with my kids, I've never seen anything wrong with them calling me daddy or calling my wife mommy. You know, my oldest, they called me daddy, still call me daddy every once in a while. Here, you know, they call me dad too, but my younger kids, 11 and 13, they still call me daddy, and my wife mommy. You know, so I don't really see anything wrong with that. No matter how old my kids get, if that's what they feel comfortable with calling us, then that's what they should call us. It's all a matter of preference to the child. It's not about what the parent expects to be called. You know, especially with people with neurodivergence. You know, we get into habit or comfort of calling someone's certain thing. Like, for the longest time, it was difficult for me to accept my oldest being trans. Not that I didn't accept them, it was difficult for me to adjust, I guess I should say. And it still is. You know, in private, I call them by their birth name, you know, by their birth gender, stuff like that. When in public, you know, I will do my best to refer to them as they, you know, or him. You know, I try to show my support in that way, but it is hard, and I can understand both views on the whole trans thing. But to me, parents should not have a say in what their children feel comfortable calling them. And that was a big part of my relationship with my parents, you know, and that's part of everything I talked about in this video and the previous video. A big part of what led to my borderline personality disorder developing. I know out of context those seem kind of like small things, and a lot of people should have told me, you know, you should just get over it, move on, grow up, all this other crap. But when you experience something like that at a very early age, and you feel like your parent doesn't love you or doesn't accept you for who you are, or doesn't want to be around you unless they want something, that's hard to get over. That is traumatic. And I think I'm going to go into a part 3 of this. I think this is going to end up being a multi-part video series, because there's more to my borderline personality development than just my relationship with my father. So I'll talk about that in a third part.